Have you been here before?
No.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Take the money and get you the materials. Help yourself to the cookies.
Yeah, there's things you help yourself on the table. Just trying to see over there.
Okay. Did you want to pay cash or check? Okay.
Help yourself to.
Thank you.
Enjoy them.
Okay, right here, the meeting.
You can find seats here except for that one.
Yeah, very much. Cool.
Yeah.
You can get to me.
Yeah, I can sit on the couch, sure.
Hello. What was the name?
It's Stefan. Yeah,
Oh,
Stefan.
okay, here you go. You guys, one household?
Correct.
Okay.
I want to purchase another book as well.
Oh, okay. Let me get that later. Okay, just remind me. All right, cool. Hi there. Joe. I'm Charlie.
Where can I put
Did you
this?
want to, here's your book there. All right. Did you want to pay cash or check?
Do you want to take this course? Oh yeah, I've seen it.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hello.
Charlie's got the right idea.
And you got a cookie.
Charlie's this guy.
Okay, one household, right? One household. Okay, very good. Thank you. No. One household is 3 people? Okay. Thank you. And then you keep your that circle and circle on the top. Help yourself to one night.
Thanks, hold it. I don't care. I'm on it inconvenience. So we've been here for like 15 minutes, picked up a hitchhiker. Finish your time. I think Charlie might be going. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely going to trade.
That, who put this here?
Me.
Yeah, you might be better on the couch, because Shaq won't pay attention, and you might not know about more. Because he's always busy.
What about, what about paint and snow in that?
Okay, I'll get it. Can I get it for
I
when you
haven't
come
got the
back?
paper here.
Oh.
Okay. How many of you have cameras? You can photograph anything you want to photograph,
Okay.
inside or out.
Also, Jock is very hard of hearing, so you have to speak very loud if you want him to hear you. Can you hear very well today?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll interpret for him.
Directly to me just now.
You don't have to ask me for permission to take pictures. You can shoot anything you want to shoot, inside or out. And the normal people that come here, they walk out very differently. Everybody that comes here is changed. So when you walk out, talk to people about the Venus watching, if you like it. Okay. Is there anybody here that doesn't know anything about the Venus Project? Okay. I guess I'll begin now. Is everybody here?
I think we got the full
Okay.
crowd, not a big one.
Okay. There's a lot of things today that aren't known And there's no such thing as magic. Like if I take this mummy and put it here, it doesn't fall off, but it's not magic. There's a heavy weight in the head that keeps it balanced. You understand? People look at it and say, well, it's levitating. No, it's not. There's no magic. All magic is done by some process. And that means that the language that we learn is a very old language. It's based on hundreds of years ago. So it makes it almost impossible to talk to one another. That's why people get into arguments, because they have no way of bridging the difference. And all human behavior, all of it, is shaped by the environment you live in. There is nothing else. All that you hear about is not true. I'm going to try to prove it to you. Don't take my word for anything. And during the question period, if I don't answer your questions, don't be polite. Say, you didn't answer my question. Okay. So let me get started. Human beings reflect their culture. Your mother said cup, table, papa, mama. Every word you use, you've been given by your society. Even if a judge tells you, to tell me in your own words what happened, you have your own words. Booga, booga. If you said that to the judge, he wouldn't know what you're talking about. That's your own words. So you use the words everybody else uses. We are made alike. We can be controlled that way. If they make us very individual, they're difficult to control. So I would say that all politicians, as far as I know, are basically corrupt. This is one of the most corrupt nations on earth. Other nations are corrupt too. There's no good country I can send you to where people aren't corrupt. Now, if you can buy cigarettes, it means your nation is corrupt. They get a kickback on the cigarettes. They're taxed. It goes for alcohol and Coca-Cola and all the drinks that you buy. They'll get a kickback on that. So your politicians are not good people. When I was much younger, when I was about 13 or 14, I asked a politician, if you're elected, how will you prevent war? He said, I don't know. There'll always be wars. There'll always be war. I said, well, how can you grow more food to feed the world's hungry? He said, that I don't know. I said, what do you know? How can you run the country if you don't know those basics? No politician ever gave us anything, like the refrigerator, or the washing machine, or the oven, or the electric light. They never gave us anything. They don't know anything. Don't take my word for it. Ask them. Ask them how you can grow more food. They don't know. They don't know anything. And this is what I'm sorry to say. I don't like what I'm saying. I'm also going to say that man, I'm going to back it up, cannot think or reason. Otherwise you'd never have war. It doesn't prove anything. They tell you that we have war to bring democracy to another country. That's a lie. We have war because they have oil resources that we need, or something we need. We don't go to war to make the world better. And no politician is concerned about human beings. Otherwise, they wouldn't outsource to China. We outsource to get things made because it's cheaper. That means they don't give a damn about you. If you don't know anything about it, George Washington had 300 slaves. Did anybody know that here?
Yeah.
I'll put that in your book. That's a lot of slaves. He'd be run out of town today if he were alive. So I'm saying that man cannot think or reason. And when I said that, assistant to the dean at Princeton said, you sound so very different than other people. Would you mind coming to Princeton and talking about the way you think? I said, they won't listen to me if I did. I have no credentials. I have the same credentials that Edison had, none. So anyway, he said to me, will you come to address the sociology department? I said, no, I want to speak to the whole university. He said, how do you do that? Just say Fresco says that man can think or reason. And that'll bring them all in. Because they're all brought up to believe that we can think and reason, most of us. And most of us are brought up to believe that everyone should have a right to their own opinion. I believe you were brought up to that. Is that right? If you live across the way from me, and I see 10 guys coming out of your apartment, I can have all kinds of opinions. You can be a language instructor, a ballet instructor, an art instructor. The answer is, I don't know what she does. Not if you ask me, I'll tell you. We don't want people to have a right to their own opinion. We want them to have access to information, but not their own opinion. You think man will ever fly? Not in 1,000 years. You think we'll ever get to the moon? No, that's a fantasy. Just say, I don't know. It's not my field. It's very hard to use those 3 words. I don't know. And whenever you see magic like this, just say, I don't know how it works. You now know that there's a heavy weight in the head. Otherwise, that couldn't be done. So there is no magic. And everybody reflects their culture. And when you speak to other people, you're talking at them, not to them. Because in their head and comes out in relation to their background. If you're brought up in Germany under Hitler, after he burned all the books, Heil Hitler, Deutschland over others, you believe in that, because that's all you know. So there's nothing the matter with a Nazi, except he was brought up in Germany. If you were brought up as a baby in Germany, you'd say Heil Hitler. And if you're brought up in Japan, you'd speak Japanese. If you're brought up in France, you speak like a French woman or man. There is no individuality. Although the teacher says you're very well gifted if you're an artist. You're very well gifted if you're a writer. You're very well gifted if you write music. What the hell does that mean? You're well gifted. Nobody ever writes music that's original. It's based on other music that they've heard. In other words, when you think about it, take Beethoven. If Beethoven or Wagner or anybody, if they were dropped by parachute over an African tribe as a baby, they'd be a headhunter. Do you understand that? You cannot step outside of your society and look back. You look at society with the language they gave you. So you're not an individual. Otherwise you couldn't talk to each other. There'd be 50 political parties, not Democrats and Republicans. If you really had freedom, you don't have freedom. You're as free as your purchasing power. I don't believe everybody here, or most of you, drive the kind of car you want. You drive what you can afford. Most of you don't live in the kind of house you want to live in. You live in what you can afford. Is that true? Okay. So what good is the word freedom? So somebody once asked me, if man can think or reason, how did Tesla invent the wireless? Now you got to think about these things. Could Tesla sit down and say, got to make a wireless? How do you do that? He wouldn't know. Think about it. Do you think Edison said, I have to make an electric light? He wouldn't even know how to say that. So something happens to people, and I'm going to try to tell you what it is. Nobody ever invented the camera, or anything else you think they invented. I'm going to tell you how it comes about. They say that Tesla invented the wireless. When you bought electric wire, they wrapped it around a cardboard tube. sometimes the wire was broken, so you connected 2 terminals to it from a battery to see if the current would go through. And if it went through, it's all right. If it didn't go through, it was broken. But once you wrapped it around a cardboard tube, and there was a coil nearby, induction, induced a current in the coil nearby. It didn't have to be connected. That's where Tesla got the wireless from. So anybody doesn't understand that? If you run electricity through a coil of wire, and the coil nearby, it'll induce a current in it without being connected. That seems. Now, how did Edison invent the electric light? He didn't know what wire would conduct electricity best, so he took pieces of wire and he ran an electric current through it. Some wires offered tremendous resistance to the electric current, and it would glow red hot. He said, gee, a source of light. So he bent it to get it all in one area, put it on his desk. It fell over and burned some papers, and he put a glass over it. That's the first electric light. Nobody ever said, gotta make electric light, gotta make wireless. You can't do that. The brain doesn't work that way. I hope you understand what I'm saying. If you don't, raise your hand. So far, anybody can be like Leonardo da Vinci. He had no special talents. He didn't associate with normal people. Well, I try to look up why he didn't associate with normal people. Because normal people always say the same thing. Good morning, how are you? How's the family? They don't say anything new. So you say, well, my brother is very sick and he needs an operation. He needs $2,000. Can you spare it? I said, no. Then why do you ask me how I am? We all do that. How are you? How's the family? So Tesla said he liked to meet people that talked of gears, levers, different things. So he associated with different kinds of people. And that's where he got all his ideas from. They weren't inborn. There's no such thing as human nature. They say, well, that's human nature. Greed, selfishness, no. If you have 2 children, and you treat one as a favorite, say you can go to movies, but your sister can't, because she didn't do her homework. Well, that makes jealousy and envy. The minute you have 2 kids, if you play with a 4-year-old, and the 7-year-old is standing there with that lip out, you say, what's the matter? He doesn't say anything. So you think that's where jealousy and envy comes from. When a little boy falls down the stairs, he has a grin on his face, the 7-year-old, because he feels he was mistreated. If you have 2 children and you play with the younger one, and the older one is standing there, that makes him feel envious. So you always put your 2 children, the older one on your lap and the younger one, say, I love you both. Now, love is a bad word, because it means different things to different people. When a guy says to a girl, I love you, what is he saying? Is he saying, I want to get laid? Or is he saying he loves her? You never know. So when a guy says, I love you, it can mean anything. But in the real world, the word love will be dropped in the future. And the word that substitutes it would be extensionality. How extensional is a person to you? How much do they influence your life, make your life better? If a person grabs your hand and says, I love you, that doesn't do anything. If they inform you, tell you things you didn't know, help you with your life, that's love. It's called extensionality. Being extensional to another person. That's love. But the word love will disappear. Now, if man can't think, the guy from the optics department at Princeton got mad at me. He got at me and said, I take issue with you. I believe man can think and reason. So I said to him, give me one example of man thinking, anything. He said, there are thousands of examples. I said, I can't deal with that. You have to give me one example of man thinking. He said, well, he said, There was a time when there was no camera, and the man had to think of a camera. I said, did you know that 1,000 years ago in the Holy Land, they made houses out of mud? They were dome-shaped. And they had no glass windows, so they cut a hole in the mud. The minute you cut a little hole in the mud to see if it's daylight out there, the image of a cow walking in the sunlight appeared on your wall upside down. That's where the Boxhall camera came from. He didn't know that. So he got mad at me. So what about the movie camera? I said, the movie camera was invented thousands of years ago. He says, light. Give me an example. So I said, well, the Chinese used to make a girl out of cardboard, and they cut it out, they made paper. They cut it out with a scissor, and it was called a dancing girl. They put it on the table as a statue, and they put a candle in front of it. As the candle flickered, the shadow moved like that. It was called a dancing girl. So you understand that? All right, now if you put 3 candles there, you had 3 dancing girls. That was the first motion picture. It didn't start out as a movie. Then later on, the man added to it, other people added to that, and after hundreds of years of adding to it, you got the movie camera. But nobody ever said, gotta make a movie camera. Gotta make electric light. You can't do that. The brain cannot unless it's suggested by something in nature. Now, a man in Paris saw a bird flying. He said, you know, if I made 2 wings, I don't know how big to make them, so I'll make them 3 feet long on each side, and put my arm in and beat on the air, I should be able to fly. I know I'll be able to fly. And he jumped off the Eiffel Tower, and he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, make wings larger next time. Nobody ever makes a mistake. How do you know how big to make the wings on the first airplane? You can't know that. How do you know how big to make it with that one? You make it this big? You don't know. So nobody ever makes a mistake in their life. They don't know. Yes.
So you're saying that to think of something original
Yes.
or new is impossible for the brain to do?
I'm sorry.
She said to think of something new or original is impossible for the brain to do. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. All information gets to your brain by your ear, your nose, your tongue,
Sensory.
or touch.
Right. So what I think I'm hearing you say is that thinking is a process of information
Yes.
known throughout one's life.
Thinking is talking to yourself.
Right.
When I say, I'll see you Saturday, you look on it, I have to take the kids, hey, Mindy Saturday.
Right. So
I can't
that's
see you.
thinking.
Thinking is talking to yourself. It's nothing magic.
So we have, in our society,
Yes.
we have wrong thinking.
If you
wrong,
wish.
Wrong thought
It's erroneous.
based on what we're seeing in the world.
Yes.
With warring and conflict and anger. So we have wrong thought and we have
Yeah.
wrong thinking.
That's why we get into arguments.
Yes.
If you knew where a person came from, if a person comes from Australia, he might say, how are you, mate? If he came from Australia. If he came from England, he'd say, old chap, are you a flyer? In other words, he would speak like an Englishman. No matter where you were raised, if you were raised in France, you'd speak like a young French woman. Do you understand?
Yeah, so the
You
wrong,
never use your own language. Where did language come from? They say, well, the person that invented language wants to communicate. No. Nobody has ever invented language. You have to have a language to invent language. So what happened? This person saw a strange animal, an elephant. He said, oh, oh. He said, oh, yeah. And it was known as oh. Depends on the first sounds the chief made. If he said, boo-boo, boo-boo, that's a lion. So with the passing of time, he made different sounds. He ate food, and it was good. If he didn't like it, he gestured first. Then he made sounds. Not good. Taboo. All the words they invented. Okay, a long, many years for language to evolve. Nobody ever sat down and invented language. How do you do that? All the stuff you get in school, 90% of what you get is bullshit. And there's no bad words. Teacher says that's a good word, that's a bad word. No bad word. Bullshit means I can't accept what you're saying. Whenever a man says bullshit, it means he can't accept what you're saying. It has nothing to do with the shit of a bull, believe me. And when a girl drops a pie, she might say fiddly dee, which means I'm sorry I dropped a pie. A guy might say shit, that means I'm sorry I dropped a pie. Has nothing to do with shit. You gotta think about those things. That's what it's about. And if you're brought up in the South, it's not your fault. They say, I will get me a black man and string him up. That's the way you're brought up. That's the language in the South. And so they're anti-black, anti-Chinese, anti-anybody that doesn't look like an American, whatever that is. So we learn how to become prejudiced. You're not born a racist. Children will play with anybody until mother says, you're a Lutheran, you don't play with that Catholic. Mother means well, but she doesn't know how to deal with the problem. They also tell you in school that the Wright brothers made the first flying machine. Not true. How do you know how big to make the wings? How do you know how big to make the propeller? They must have learned from the mistakes of others. Does that make sense to you? Does it make sense to everybody? Do you have any questions about it? Yes.
So if all inventions are the collection of much information, then no one invented anything, but they discovered the correct formula that allows someone to fly. So you say Edison discovered light.
Sure, nobody invented anything,
but
people discover
the right formula.
the right formula to fly.
So that would be the correct language to
You're right.
discover.
That would be the correct language.
Yes. You're
Many
right.
interacting variables.
No. Nobody knows how to fly or how to build an airplane. They learn from the mistakes of others. Men make wings that are too small and the airplane doesn't take off. They make a propeller this big. It just cools them off, but it doesn't move the airplane. They make them different sizes until it works. That's what I mean by nobody ever makes a mistake. They don't know. How do you know how big to make the wings on the first airplane? Nobody knows. So they encounter the small one doesn't work. The short wings don't lift the plane up. If you make your wings too big, both wings take off and they hit each other. So as Siemens said, you have to brace your wings so that you don't do that. He had a bunch of rope. He said, we brace our mast on a boat so the wind doesn't blow it over. You have to brace the wings of the airplane. So before they braced them, they didn't. They just made wings. Then around and the plane would go along the ground and the wings would take off. They'd hit each other. So there was a lot of mistakes, thousands of mistakes, before the Wright brothers built their airplane. But they tell you in school they had a bicycle shop and they built an airplane. They tell you that Edison made the first electric light. Instead of saying that, say, the first electric light came from the Edison labs, I don't know where he got the idea. That would be honest. If you say, I don't know. But if you say that he was running electric current through different metals, and some got very hot, they resisted the flow of electric current, and it glowed red hot, and Edison said, gee, a source of light. He was just as surprised as you would be. But he's not inventive. Everybody can be like Leonardo da Vinci. Everybody can invent if they're told that you don't have to look to a guy with inborn instincts to invent. No such thing. A person is never born greedy. He learns to be greedy in a scarcity society. Now you have to think about the next statement. If you made all things available to people, free, no cost, just made them available, at a resource center, like the public library. When you go to the public library, you don't have to pay anything to take out 7 books. You can take out more books, but you have to tell the librarian you want to take out more than they are. As long as the librarian knows that. So there's no money exchanged at the public library. So I thought of, gee, if you had next to the public library a camera center, where anybody can check out the camera, no matter what kind of camera. They show you how to use it, and you check it out. If you want it for 3 weeks, say I want it for 3 weeks. But then when you're through using it, you return it back to the camera center, like the library. Now women, I don't know why, they march to get a public library. There was no public library in the old days. Books were very expensive. And these women marched, and they had rotten eggs thrown at them. They were beaten up by the police and put in jail for obstructing traffic, marching. And the people that were throwing the rotten eggs at the women were the people that owned bookstores. So that if you made books available free, people wouldn't buy books from our store. But they were wrong. The more you read, the more books you bought. You want to know more. So they bought more books. So next door to that, I have a center where you can check out any kind of musical instrument. Saxophone, banjo, fiddle, anything you want. And make things available to you, like the public library. If you do that, there'll be no crime. None. People are not born criminals. They steal because they have poor access to those things, or little access. Remember, think about it. If people have access to the necessities of life, they will not steal. Nobody's going to hit you on the head and take your watch if they can get one at the access center. It's cheaper to give things to people than put them in jail. Let's say you steal a watch worth $150. If it's your third offense, you might get 7 years. You know how many watches that costs? How stupid can you be? It's cheaper to give a watch. It's cheaper to give things to people than put them in jail. They get haircuts, food, clothing, dental work, medical care in jail. So what the hell are you building prisons for? America has the most prisons of any nation. America is one of the most dumbest countries in the world. But they say we're very advanced. Where did we get this land? Does it say in your school books? We stole it from the Indians. The Indians didn't say, come on over, build anything you want. They fought back. They said, hey, you're pushing us off the land. We like to migrate with the animals and shoot them as we need them. But you're pushing us into the desert. So they fought back. So the government set up special agencies where they paid you $10 for every Indian you killed. So a guy appeared there and he said, I just killed 10 Indians. The government says, how do we know that? And we weren't there. You got to bring back a piece of the Indian. So we scalped. We cut their scalps off. We brought 10 scalps back. That's where scalping came from. It is an inborn, yes.
I understand the concept how a society where there is no money and all the resources are distributed would eliminate the crime that are related to stealing or something like that.
Yes.
But there are other types of crimes that I don't know how would it address that situation. Some of them would happen by that, but let's say rape.
If you're walking down the street with your mother and somebody calls her a goddamn whore, you want to punch him. And if you punch him, that doesn't change his mind. You understand?
Right.
You have to teach him the new way of thinking. Do you understand that?
He was asking, what about crimes of rape or passion, or is that what you...
Yes.
Men are conditioned to want to have sex with women. So they talk to women differently. They say, you're very cute. I like it when you smile, the dimple. I love the way your hair falls. Nobody talks to me that way. No male. They say, I love your wrinkle, Fresco, and your bald head. They don't talk that way to me. Men talk differently to women than they do to men. They say, damn it, instead of shit. and so they watch their language. But like I said before, if you lived in the Arab world, it'd be normal for your daddy to have 4 wives if he can afford it. That'd be normal to that culture. When we go there, we say, what's the matter with you people? You have 10 wives, some of you. And the kings in the old days used to have many wives. And the men, religious men, used to take girls 13 years old and make them part of their family. They were all child molesters, according to the books I've read. So what the hell's right and wrong? There's no such thing as right or wrong. It has to do with the culture you're brought up in. They think that Hitler was sent by God to lead Germany. If you were brought up in Germany as a baby, after Hitler burned the books, you'd say, Heil Hitler, Deutschland over alles, Germany above all. It'd be normal for you to be that way. And he might get mad at you. He gets mad at you because the way you were brought up, he shouldn't get mad at you. He should understand where you're coming from. So once you understand where a person's coming from, you never get mad at people again.
Jacques, what about crimes of passion? I don't know if you've heard that.
It doesn't occur because boys and girls have sex when they're able to. The girl doesn't go to bed with a guy because he wants to get laid. She goes to bed because she wants to get laid. Women are brought up differently. You save it until you get married, but that's changing fast. So I would say that if you're brought up in a culture where boys and girls swim nude as babies, there'd be no peeping toms. But I was told by the teacher, it's human nature. So I said, I don't know what that is. So I wanted to go to some primitive island to see what people would be like if they weren't educated in our world. So I found a group of islands called Tuamotu. I went to Tahiti first, but the Chinese already owned the store and they were selling things for money, so I didn't like that. I wanted a primitive island, so I found a group of islands called Tuamotu, about 300 miles east of Tahiti. And I went there. And when I got there, I brought mirrors and beads, which I was going to give to the natives. I didn't come to take anything away from you. I've come to give you these mirrors and beads. But the natives already opened my suitcase. They were giving out my mirrors and beads to one another with a great big grin on their face. They didn't feel they were doing anything wrong. But where I come from, they were doing something wrong. They were giving out my stuff without my permission. So I said, what's going on? They said, you have too many mirrors and beads. I didn't understand what that meant till 3 days later, when the old folks pulled in a net full of fish. They threw fish to anyone standing there. Didn't say, you owe me $5, you owe me $3, they just gave it to you. Do you understand? The custom of the island was different. And the little girls were swimming nude with the little boys, and the adults wore no clothing. It was tropical. Now the men made jock straps occasionally when they climbed trees so their balls don't get caught in the branches. And they didn't wear anything other than that. They were all very normal to their culture, but they wore no clothing. And since they wore no clothing, I never saw a male look at a female body. They looked at their eyes when they got home. Do you understand? No one used to get a load of that chick. That's in this society. That's the way we get to be. So every book written about sex is culture bound. It's not true. If you raise children nude, they don't look at each other. There were no peeping toms on the island. Do you understand that? And they didn't reach for a girl's breast. They stroked the whole female, be like you, from the top of the head all the way down. When you stroke a dog, you stroke the whole dog. You don't stop at the balls. You stroke the whole dog. But you see, abnormality comes from hiding the female body. And the men say, hey, get a load of that. And she's well stacked. But there's nothing to the breast if you're brought up into a multi. Do you understand that? If you were brought up on the island, you'd never look at a female's legs or breasts or anything. They say, well, that's natural, human nature. They just say, I don't know where it comes from. but they're so full of shit, they make up stories. They tell you that animals have horns to defend themselves. Oh, I said, where's the horns on a rabbit? It sure can use them. A rabbit has no horns, and horns don't always go forward. They go sideways too. They go backwards. They go around. So they're not always there to defend them. So I said, well, maybe animals born with horns and learned how to use them. I said, how do you know that's true? I said, I don't know. I used to train dogs to lead the blind. They used to walk with a white stick. So I trained the dog to lead the blind by a leash. And the interesting thing about the dog is a 65-year-old woman walked over to the dog and said, what a nice dog, it leads the blind. I said, no, I could have trained that dog to tear soldiers to pieces, vicious. Or I could raise a dog to lead the blind. No dog is good or bad, depends on the way that they're brought up. Do you understand that? The same is true of people. There's no such thing as a criminal. Most senators are criminal. Yes.
As far as animals are concerned, dogs, there's some dogs that don't have the temperament to attack. And
She said there's some dogs that don't have the temperament to attack.
I've had dogs, and you teach
Yes.
them.
That's true.
So,
Now, there are many dogs that have large adrenal glands. And if the adrenal gland secretes a lot of adrenaline, and you bring it up with a lot of people, the adrenal glands don't secrete that much adrenaline. But the dogs in the wild, the wolf, will attack. But if you raise a wolf, it with human beings, with children that don't hurt the dog, that give it food, the dog will lick their faces. So there are glands in animals that protect them, but they're not to protect the animal. Let me put it your way. A doctor came here and he said, we have eyes to see with, ears to hear with, nose to smell with, tongue to taste with, and hands to touch with. I said, you really believe we have eyes to see with? He said, I no question about it. So I took him into a dark room and said, see. He said, you have to turn the lights on. And you can't see with your eyes, you need light to see. Is that true? All right, so he said, gee, you know, I never thought of it that way. I said, think of it. Think of everything you've learned. 90% of what you learn is bullshit, including universities. They really don't know. And psychologists don't study human behavior. They study the effects, they don't know this, that environment has on behavior. If they studied human behavior, they would never adjust you to their system. Psychologists try to make you fit in with the system you live in. That's not psychology. That's accommodation. Psychiatrist is the same way. He tries to fit you in with the culture you live in. Although your culture is very mixed up, the psychologists and psychiatrists is mixed up too. They don't study human behavior. They don't study the effects of environment on behavior. That's why you don't have any advocacy of changing our social system. We have to change the way we think. And the way you do that is by working on people. When you leave here, if you like what I say, talk to people about the Venus Project. It's not a political party. It's a way of thinking. And so you never get mad at anybody because you know where they're coming from. If a guy has 4 wives, since I was brought up in Arabia, you don't get mad at him. You understand them. You understand? But kids in America behave very much alike. They say, hey, you, I can run faster than you. Always competitive. I bet I can fight you. They always say the same thing. But if they're brought up in a cooperative society, they help one another. They don't say, I can fight you, or my daddy can lick your daddy. They're always competitive. So we live in a competitive world. That's why there's, by the way, this is more difficult to understand than anything I'm about to say. There's no such thing as beauty. If we were born with a pointed head and 2 horns sticking out, everybody looked alike, you'd fall in love with them. Do you understand that? the fact that certain people look differently. Somebody says, that's a good-looking person, that's not a good-looking person. They give you your values, yes.
We know that nature functions by competition, right? Like all animals, that's just nature.
You
And
said nature functions by competition, that's just nature.
and all animals are competitive, and they must be competitive to survive.
And all animals are competitive, they must be competitive to survive.
Cows, where there's a lot of grass, cows don't attack each other.
Well, for example,
And deer,
there's this example I can use. There's two worms. I forgot the name. They're almost microscopic. If you put them together in a enclosed space with some food, one worm will have to eat more than the other, and the other will end up dying. And that's just being competitive.
scarcity produces aggression. Do you understand that? If I control all the water, the drinking water, and I own all the topsoil, I took it by force and violence. After I stole all the land I need, you want some of my water, you'll have to pass my army to get it. So war is to preserve the things you stole. Where do we get this land? We stole it from the Indians. Isn't that right? They didn't say, come on over, build whatever you want to build. So you have all nations become nations by taking land away from other people. They invite them in, they're second-rate citizens. That's why we got all the land. That's why England, they said the sun never sets on England. Where the hell did they get all that land? They took it. And we are one of the biggest thieves in the world, the Americans. Read the book, Confessions of Economic Hitler. How many of you ever read it? You can get it on the internet. It's about a guy, not an anti-American, a good American, and there was a general, Smedley Butler. He was a Marine, the most decorated Marine we had. He wrote a book called War is a Racket. And it shows how many millions of dollars the aircraft industry makes selling airplanes to the government. If during the war, everybody was put on the same basis of pay as a soldier, nobody made any profit, there wouldn't be any war. They sell machine guns. They sell aircraft carriers for billions of dollars to the government. And a lot of billionaires are made in times of war. That's what Smedley Butler's book is about. He realized he was fighting for the big corporations, not the American people. If the government loved the people, you couldn't buy cigarettes. Because cigarettes always, not sometimes, produce cancer or heart disease. But it may take 10 to 20 years for cigarettes to produce cancer of the lungs or the mouth or chewing tobacco. The reason the government sells it because they get a kickback on the taxation of it. That means they don't give a damn about you. That's why they outsource to China, because of cheap labor and cheap factories. We don't go to China to bring democracy. We never go to another country to bring democracy. We go because they have oil or something we need. Can you understand that? Yes.
Going back on the other part of nature, the nature of being territorial, I mean, I think all animals are territorial, and so are we. So,
He believes all animals are territorial, and so are we.
So trying to change being territorial would be changing basically our nature. And do you think we can actually change our nature?
He said being territorial is our nature. Do you think we can change our nature?
No, it's learned. When you're brought up on an island, you're told that this chief knows more about other islands. And the other islanders are not as good as we are. You're always taught that. You say, it's great to be an American. God damn it. It's great.
I think a battery just went out. Your mic went out. Let me just check this, I'm sorry. You want to go over the fish on Tuamotu and how they,
This one.
it's not that one. Hold on. Sorry, is that one full?
Yeah.
It's not full. It's on the way out.
Is Lincoln?
only when animals find, when animals find other animals like a zebra. If a lion sees a zebra, there's not that many zebras. So they eat as much as they want.
Hold on a minute, Jack, your voice is too low.
My voice too low.
I can hear you.
Well, I can hear you.
We can hear you.
They're trying to record the.
I have a question for you, John.
Hold on, I got the Oprah here. I don't know if I can get to it then. Where it's mounted. Okay, good.
I think they can hear me back there.
Now, hold on a minute. I think I can get this for you. Okay, try it.
Okay, now,
Yeah.
is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Is the one back there working?
Yep, right now.
Okay. So I told you about this, but I didn't know what creativity was. I didn't know why some people were creative. They say some people are lazy, some people are hardworking, no such thing. A lazy person is a person that's not rewarded for their behavior or given insufficient reward. In other words, if your father tells you, get up off your ass and mow the lawn, and when you're through with that, clean the goddamn car. But if he walks over you after you clean the car, and would you like to go to a movie? I appreciate what you've done. You tend to do the same thing. Otherwise you hide when you see daddy coming. You understand that? So all human behavior is generated. So there was a guy that was wanted by the police. They believe he ate 45 children. The public wanted to torment him to death. They didn't want him to die an easy way. But a psychiatrist named Worthen said, I want to try to find out what made him that way and get rid of those conditions that makes a serial killer. And they said, gee, that's strange. He's just bad. He said, I don't know that. And here's what he found out. When the boy was 7 years old, he was touching his private parts. Children touch their head, their ear, their nose, and their private parts. But his mother was an old-time Baptist. She said, you're going to burn in hell touching that part of your body. That's sinful. And use it when you get married only, but you never touch it. And she scared the hell out of the kid. She told him he would be burned in hell eternally if he touched it. So the kid was shaking. And she said, at 2 in the morning, the kid was screaming. She went into his bedroom, he stuck needles into his genitals, because he didn't want to go to hell. Can you understand that? He used to take other kids into the woods, such as blacks or Mexicans, because they're relatively freer, and try to cut their genitals off. Why? To save them from hell. What do you think a soldier is? He's a killing machine. He's taught to use a machine gun and kill people. He doesn't know why he's killing people. I asked a lot of soldiers, do you know what the war with Germany is about? No, they didn't know. He said, when your country needs you, she needs you. And they had no idea. And so I asked myself a lot of questions. What makes a person cooperative? What makes a person selfish? What makes a person do that? If we got rid of those conditions that made you a mean and a serial killer, we wouldn't have any serial killers. Like I said before, if boys and girls swim nude when they're very young, there'll be no peeping toms. Nobody had any pictures of a nude woman on the islands. Can you understand that? For anybody that doesn't understand that, they never had a picture of a nude woman because they've seen nude women.
Chuck, can you discuss how they threw fish to people? I don't know if you did that already. You did? Okay,
Yeah.
good. In terms of cooperation and territorial?
Yes.
Okay.
Anyway, any other questions before I move on? Yes.
I disagree with you when you say beauty does not exist because you cannot prove it does not exist.
She said she disagrees with you that beauty does not exist because you cannot prove it does not exist.
I'll try to prove it to you. You don't see an elephant trying to have sex relations with a tiger, do you? Only elephants. And animals tend to have sex relations with the person they're brought up with. Did you ever see a dog get up on a person's knee and try to have sex? A dog doesn't know. So you can bring up a human being to go from male, a male go from male, or a female from female. And what we found out is that if you take 3 effeminate women, you know, women move differently than men. Oh, did I see a gorgeous cat? They speak, or something like that. I'm exaggerating. But if you understand what I'm saying, if 3 women raise a normal boy, he says, I want to go too. He said, a goddamn fag. He's not a goddamn anything. If you were brought up under those conditions, you'd go for men.
Can I deal with this beauty thing, unless you want to go on?
No, you can deal with it.
What he's really saying is that beauty is culture bound. There's no such thing. The culture says this woman's beautiful, that woman's beautiful, that nose is ugly, that face is beautiful. A child would love and hug a toothless old grandmother until he starts seeing Disney pictures when the woman with the crooked nose and is a witch. You know what I mean?
You're talking about attraction and beauty in between people. I'm talking about beauty overall. The spiritualness when you see a flower and you smile because you like what you see. That sense of attraction to beauty that is natural, that exists. That feeling. If beauty does not exist, what do you call that?
Doesn't exist. What's the attraction to a flower that you might see?
Well, I'm not attracted to flower, you are.
But beauty is eye of the beholder, you're correct. But it does exist in each person.
Yeah, because this beauty is in the eyes of the beholder.
That's what she just said, but it does exist. It's different to people, but it does exist, she's saying.
No, it doesn't exist. If everybody had a pointed head, you'd fall in love with them. Except you. If everybody had a pointed head and 2 horns sticking out, you'd fall in love with them.
But I'm not talking about love. I'm not talking about love. I'm talking about the spiritual attraction to something that makes you smile. That is
She's
beauty.
talking
That's
about
my
the
definition
spiritual
of beauty.
attraction to something that makes you smile. That's beauty. You know, wait a second. If you've seen some of these old movies during the heights of the, I mean, they still have it, the racism that was in the streets where the bigoted Southerns would lynch a black person, okay? And you would look at them and they were drooling. That was beautiful to them. You can be taught how to hate people with slanted eyes or a dark skin or a light skin, and they have that feeling of beauty. When the people pulled the tab in the concentration camps to kill people that they were taught were not beautiful, that were ugly, that were causing all the problems in the world, they slept very well at night. But it was people who were taught humanistic ideas that had trouble with that.
What about the burning the books in Nazi Germany? People thought it was beautiful burning the books.
Where there were no governments, no nothing.
Beauty is very subjective.
It is subjective when there is that culture. But we're going back to Neolithic period during the cavemen. There were men that had multiple women that they'll fornicate. But there was always that one who returned to because he had that attraction. And that's natural.
I didn't know that.
Because there have been studies on it. Archaeologists don't just think about it.
It's natural, it feels natural because your values coincide. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't, I don't know you, but I don't think you'd want to have sex with somebody who was brought up more fascistically, who was mean, who was abusive. But other women are put down and they like that. They keep going back to that because that's all they know.
I understand that, but
It's not a matter of
I don't understand how that
beauty.
relates to beauty. But I'll end it there so we can go
And let me just ask you.
I just want to say something else too, and I know it's a little contrary to what your definition of beauty is. You have your own definition. definition of spirituality, so you have a lot of conflict. Everybody has their own definition of what's right and wrong, which are erroneous things in the culture. And if you get rid of those things, you know, you have beauty contests and all the women feel terrible when only one wins.
Oh,
You know what I
my
mean?
comes with beauty.
You have different notions of beauty in the
You can't do
cultures.
that, Roxy. It doesn't work.
All right.
Listen, how many of you believe that people can be changed? Will you raise your hand?
The people?
People can be changed.
People?
All right.
Yeah.
But if you believe that human nature was fixed, you would have England, France, you'd have all the same behavior all over the world. And I know on the islands, the beauty to them was that the girl's butt stuck out. The more it stuck out, the more beautiful. So they try to make girls with big butts with a beautiful girl. Can you understand that? If everybody had a nose in America, a foot long, you'd have surgery done. So you look like normal people. In the Arab world, it might be normal to beat your wife 3 times a day to get some sense into her. Now that'd be normal. The kids don't look at as the young man as bad. You say he's treating his wife as best he knows how. There are men that beat their children. They try to beat their sense into their heads, or their value system into their children's heads. And sometimes if a person marries outside of their religion, their father would turn them off as though they're dead. Did you know that? You could be brought up to hate Filipinos, Japanese, all kinds of people if you're brought up in the wrong environment. If you understand, all human beings need the same thing: clean air, clean water, good food, a relevant education. They all need the same thing. They don't need different things. They don't need, you know, a lot of people believe in God. They believe God made man and a woman because everything they look at is made by machine. So they figure there must be a guy that lives up there, that lives forever. And if you do everything that Jesus asked you to do, you'd live forever up there. Let's say you're 4,000 years old and you're in heaven. You wouldn't want to talk to anybody anymore because you heard it all. You could be 50,000 years old and still alive in heaven. It's a ridiculous concept. You wouldn't talk to God even anymore because you've heard it all. Do you understand that? The Bible is written by ignorant men that didn't know. So I don't know where all this came from. That's how you get interested in science. Because science tries to tell you where it comes from. They say that all things are shoved by something else. And nothing is self-generative. Now people ask me, how come you're so different? Well, you're not like everybody else. Because my grandfather told me people came from all over the world and they brought their printing press, language, religion, stories, all kinds of things they brought to America. And he said, never pledge allegiance to any one country. If you love people, you love the earth. Take care of the earth. Don't cut down the trees. Don't dump toxic material into the soil. Don't spray poisons on plants. And never pledge allegiance to any one country. Just pledge allegiance to the earth and everyone on it. Because they all have their land taken away from them. So I thought that made sense. So my teacher said, today we're going to recite the Declaration of Independence and loyalty to the United States. I says, I can't do that. He said, what do you mean you can't do that? He grabbed me by the ear, took me right to the principal's office. And the principal said, why don't you want to pledge allegiance? Everybody does. I said, everybody once believed in witches in America. They really did. In Salem, Massachusetts, they burnt women alive that were called witches. But what they don't tell you in your school books, if you found a witch, you inherited their property. Did you know that? So there was a lot of witch hunting. They inherited your property and your bank account. So there was a lot of hunting for witches. And they put them on a chair and put them under water. And after 15 minutes, if they came up dead, they were right. And everybody they ever drowned was right. See, they made the law to fit their own stupidity. And men in America used to treat, women were not allowed to vote. I don't know if you know that. And this is recent, when I say recent, in the past 60 years or 70 years, women got the right to vote. Women are treated as second-rate citizens. If you do the work of a man, you don't earn as much as a man. Who made the law? Men. If he goes out with 6 women, he's called Don Juan. If you go out with 2 men, you're a tramp. Who wrote the book? The men. Think about that. The men are full of shit, is what I'm trying to tell you. And so are the women, because they think that's true. They think they should look up to the men. No, men are stupid too. They come both ways. So the army teaches you to be a killing machine. If I were in charge of the army, I'd take all the soldiers, send them back to school to become problem solvers. We have a lot of unresolved problems. And we want people to be able to work out those problems. That's what we need, not soldiers. The more people you kill, the less they follow. There's a hand up here.
Jacques, they would only solve a problem they would only be able to try to solve the problem from their historic perspective. So you take these...
They would only be able to solve a problem from their historic perspective.
Which would be biased.
Which would be biased.
Based on their upbringing.
Yeah.
Based on their upbringing.
And we would undo their value system.
Okay, so let's fast forward. Today, Islam...
We would undo the value system.
Okay, we undo the value system.
Yes,
so
we
in
can.
America...
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll agree with that. So in America, we have a lot of immigrants. And we have a lot of people that come in. Islam is a big issue with Sharia law. They're trying to change our value system.
They don't know how.
And we're trying to tell them they shouldn't apply their value system
They
here.
don't know how to do that. When I was a kid, I said, how are you going to change the world? There's so many different customs, different concepts of God. So I worked on Catholics to start with. They were very rigid. So I said that human nature is inborn. So I said to them, when the Pope comes to America, he points to God. Because God up in heaven controls everything. When he goes to China, he points the wrong way. He used to think the earth was flat and God was up there. Now that we know it's round, he points the wrong way in China. When he goes to Brazil, he points sideways because he didn't know that the earth was round. Do you understand? The Pope hasn't kept up with ideas. So he's a nice guy, but he doesn't know anything. He doesn't claim to know everything either. So I'm saying we reflect our culture. I once asked an American Indian, I said, if you could have anything you want, anything, what would it be? He said, I like a good straight bow and arrow. Straight arrows, no. He can only ask for things within what he knows about. He never would ask for a Mercedes to drive. Or he would never ask for a twin-engine Beechcraft. He never knew they existed. So they always ask for things within their culture. No Chinese baby was ever born speaking Chinese. No matter how many generations they spoke Chinese. You do not inherit acquired characteristics. If your mother spoke French, you're born, as a baby, you don't say, Vive la France. You say with the language your mother speaks. Do you understand? No baby in America was ever born speaking English. They had to go to school to learn it. No matter how many generations speak English.
John, there's a question here.
Could you share with us from your life some experiences that shaped or transformed your thinking to get where you are now?
When I was a kid, I took a watch apart and I looked at a gear. The gee, that'd make a great Capitol building. The different departments would be in the extensions on the gears. That's where I got that idea from. I know where every invention I ever made came from. Most inventors don't know that. I don't know, it just came to me. They think it comes from nature somehow. They don't know. I ask children, how do you walk? I said, I don't know. When I was a baby, I used to crawl. Then I got up and I fell over and I learned to balance myself. And I said, how do you walk? I don't know. So I got up. In those days, I got up. Today, it's a little harder for me. I got up and I said, how do you walk? He says, I don't know. I made a robot that fell over all the time. So I said, how do you walk? I said, well, I have to take the weight off this leg and put it on that leg and head that leg that way. Then I have to take the weight off this leg and head it that way. Really? And once I did that, I built a robot that didn't fall over. But I had to know what walking is. Our language doesn't tell us anything. They say, man, this man is bad, or man is naturally evil. He's not naturally anything. Depends on the way he's brought up. And that goes for animals. They can be brought up to tear people to pieces or help them. In some land, the elephants help people.
So can you remember what helped you to be inquisitive? Because you say that it's all your upbringing and your culture you run. What helped you personally?
My friends were all different religions. All as a kid, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And I had to take their religion away to get them to work together. So I took their religion away first by exposing the Bible. I did this. I said, in the Bible, most Bibles, not all of them, saying, thou shalt not kill. Is that right? And when war comes, it's okay. It's okay to kill. Then it says, love your enemy in the Bible. If a man strikes you, turn the other cheek. Don't hit him back. It says, judge not, lest you be judged. That means you're not to do jury duty, because you don't know what made the man that way. So you have no right to judge him. They don't understand the Bible they got on. They don't even understand what they're reading in church. So I asked religious people, do you believe you shall not kill? Yeah. Was your father in the army? Yes. What happened? What happened? He released. They don't even know what the hell they hear in church. In church they tell you God made all creatures, take care of them. Oh, did he make the mosquitoes? The minister told me that God in his infinite wisdom put a tail on the cow to keep the mosquitoes off the back end. Why did he make the mosquitoes? And he wouldn't have to make the tail. Then I asked a lot of questions. The minister told me that God in his infinite wisdom, he made people smart and some less smart to do the work. So I said, he said he makes it rain to make the plants grow. I said, God can make the plants grow without the rain. He doesn't need rain. So I raised my hand. I said, why does it rain at sea? So he said, hold your hand on me. Beat the shit out of me. Then that's because he was hurt. He couldn't answer that. He said, I don't know why it rains at sea. That's strange. I don't know. Then he'd be honest. But he wasn't even honest. So God had made two people, Adam and Eve, in heaven. And he said to Eve, don't eat of the fruit of a certain tree. And he made a snake. In the Bible it says a snake walked upright in the old days. And the snake tempted Eve to eat of the fruit of knowledge. And she ate it. And he got mad and he kicked them both out of heaven, slammed the gate shut. He's supposed to be all loving, all understanding. That doesn't make sense if it's in the Bible. So the Bible is so loaded with contradictions, you know what I mean by that? Opposite stories, that it didn't make sense to me. And he lived up in the clouds. How can he live up in the clouds? He's made in the image of man. He's got teeth. He has to shit. He has to eat. If he's made in the image of man. If he's made in the image of man, how does he fly around up there? All these stories are terrible. If a man tried to tell you a story about his cousin that can do that, you say you're a dreamer. You see, you read the Bible and think about what you're reading. See if it makes sense to you. It doesn't make sense. So let's go on.
JB has a question.
Yeah.
Jack, this way.
Hey, Jacques. Yeah, since there's many different cultures all over the world with different value systems, do you think presenting the Venus Project can be done from one point of view, or do you think it would need to be presented from the different points of view of the different cultures?
In different cultures, you present it with a different point of view. For example, I said, how do you know your system will work? I said, as a kid, when I first designed it. I said, I don't know. Well, why don't you test it out to see if it works? So I went in Miami, I joined the Ku Klux Klan to see if I can turn them around. If I couldn't turn them around, it doesn't work. So the guy that was the head of the Klan owned a war surplus store, and they used to buy lenses from him. And one day he said to me, what do you do with the stuff you buy from me? He bought government surplus. I said, I make optical devices. He says, what do you mean by that? Can I see them? I says, anytime, just call me. And if I have the time, I'll be there at a given time. So he came to my lab. He was so impressed, he suggested that I go to a Klan meeting and talk to the boys about how I think. I said, Lou, if I did that, they wouldn't listen to me. He says, I'm in charge. He was in charge of the Klan in Miami. There was 32 members in the old days. So he said, you guys listen to Jacques for 1 hour, and then we'll talk about it. So they listened for 1 hour, and I gradually dissolved the Klan in Miami. And then I came back to New York. I asked a lot of people, who are the most backward people in New York? They said, well, not all of them, but the Arabs that live in Atlantic Avenue are very backward. They still believe the earth is flat. So I said, I'm going to try to change them. So I called the guy in charge. His name was Elbaz. He said, you're an Arab? That's the way he spoke. I'm giving you exact report. He said, you're an Arab? I said, yes, in Arabic. I speak a little bit of many languages, just enough to get by. So he said, you believe the world is round? He held his hand up like, I said, yes. He went, when he comes from, that means that's not possible. He said, look, the ocean is straight, it's no round. That's what he said to me. So I said, boy, this guy is going to be interesting for me to change. So I brought a balloon with me, because I figured it'd be resistant. And I blew it up and told him to hold the balloon. And why for do you give me a balloon to hold? I said, just wait a second. I put some cornflakes in there, and I rubbed the balloon with fur, fast. And the balloon picked up a charge, and all the cornflakes went up and stuck to the balloon all around. And his jaw hit the pavement. He said, well, he magnet? I said, So he explained it to the others, and he changed them in 3 hours. I went very easy with him. I'm trying to give you a light. Here. If we can get it in the corner. These are magnets. To a magnet, I don't exist. The magnetic field works right through my hand. Can you see it?
Yeah.
If I put it on the table, to the table, a magnetic field doesn't exist. You can get up if you can't see it. But I want that to stand up, lie down, stand up. So to the table, the magnetic field doesn't exist. You don't exist. Proof that you don't exist. I don't exist for magnetic field.
Need one here, Rob.
Fine. Now, if I want to, I can stand up, fine, I can stand up. So it must mean that a magnetic field penetrates the human body as though it was nothing there. Let me show you something. If you break it apart, you can't pull it apart. They have very strong magnets, but you can break it apart. If you turn one end in the opposite direction, you have difficulty pushing them together. Hang on. Rigidly, try to push them together. He's not doing that intentionally.
Sit down. You got big muscles, you can't pull that apart.
In the future, maglev trains will repel the train off the tracks. There are people that hate the maglev train. That's people that make wheels for trains, because it never wears out. If you invest $10 million in oil platforms, you don't want to see the electric car. You understand what I'm saying? So the free enterprise system has a lot of evil in it too. You try to defend what you've got. You don't work for the benefit of people, yes.
This question is related more to the resource-based economy. So, do you really believe there can be enough resources for everyone in the whole world to create this resource-based economy?
Do you think there's enough resources in the whole world to create a resource-based economy, to take care of everyone?
There's more than enough. You know how much we spend on this Iraq war? Billions of dollars, and it does nothing. It wrecks the cities and kills people. And then when you kill somebody, that doesn't change their mind.
I'm talking about like more like resources such as minerals. There are minerals that are less abundant than others, and do you think?
You're talking about resources such as, I'm going to talk over you just so I say what you're saying.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Okay.
Resources such as minerals that might be limited.
I know. In other words, they don't do enough cancer research because they don't have the money. You don't understand that. And they don't donate money. They donate money to the War Department. They spend billions on the atom bomb. What good is that? So you bomb Japan, does that change the people there? No. When you shoot somebody, that can't change them. When you kill or injure somebody, it doesn't change them. Only when you talk to them. And you can talk to a lot of people, there's a certain percentage you can't change because they've been too heavily indoctrinated.
Jacques, he's asking, do we have enough resources?
We have more than enough. I answered that before.
How do you control population? Let's say,
we don't have separate nations. The Venus Project wants to bring all the nations together as one nation and to take care of the earth, because it's the only thing we have that supports it.
He's asking, how do you control population?
Okay, first you do a survey of how much, say you do a survey of a certain state of Texas, and there's so much arable land area and so much water in the ground. There's not an infinite supply. That tells you how big a city can be. So we no longer build cities like we do. We do a survey first, and we ask, how many people can the earth supply as it is today? And if the information is 7 billion, if you go 8 billion, a lot of the people will starve to death. So we teach children to understand statistics. So instead of you having 10 kids and he having 10 kids, there's going to be trouble in the future.
Right.
So children are smart enough to know. Mostly educated people have less children. Did you know that today? And in the future, they will have no children. Because children are a pain in the ass. They want to say, I want a balloon, and you get them a balloon. I want the candy. They have nothing new to say to you. Children, they're a pain in the ass. If I say, let's go hiking tomorrow, you say, I gotta stay home, I got 3 kids, I gotta take care of them. Well, they can't be useful to you until they're about 16 or 15, when they know more. But you know all that then. And then they want to leave home because you're too difficult to deal with. And I know you've been brought up to want children, but most people in the future will be brought up not to want children. No, that's only, not everything is temporary. Every city that you see that I've designed, I've passed. So if I was called upon to do a city, it would be different than any of those ones. And nothing can be frozen. Some people call me a utopian. I'm not a utopian. I don't believe there is such a thing as utopia. I think it's the best city I know of up to now. But 10 years from now, the kids will design their own cities. If you make a statue or fresco and put it in the city, it'll hold things back. I want kids to change things continuously. There are no final frontiers, no best city, no best laptop. You can design the best laptop you know how to design, but 10 years from now, it'll be smaller, lighter, until it fits on a ring. Molecular recording. And you'll have it all on the little tiny pinpoint of information. Nothing can remain the same. You can't have a free enterprise system without an undergoing change. What will make a change? Not people like me. What will make a change is automation. And more automation, automobile factories today had 3,000 people working there. Now they have less than 1,000. And machines bring the cars forward, and machines put the wheels on. They're getting rid of people. Even in banks, you run the card through. You don't need to wait in line. At the supermarket, they're trying to do away with the cashiers by running your card through if you got a credit card. So the more people you displace, the less money they have. The less money they have, then the longer system will fail. This system is failing. Not only here, but all over the world. All governments are breaking down. Don't take my word for it. Watch your news. Yes.
Going back to the resources questions, I want to be more specific. I think that some resources may be scarce. There may be not enough for everybody. How could you manage that so that there will be no greed for those resources which are definitely scarce?
Yes. The way you do that is you instruct kids. The reason that most factories are not automated yet is because they don't have the money to put in automated systems. But automated systems, you don't need to heat the building in the winter. You need no lights for the workers. There's no bathroom where they go in and smoke. There's no unemployment compensation, and there's much less work. So it's cheaper to automate than to pay people.
The question was, in the future, when there are scarce resources, how do you handle that without greed?
Here's how you handle it. First of all, we keep things scarce. The diamond mines in Kimberley, we burn diamonds, they're carbon. We burn to keep the price up. We plow under food sometimes to keep the price up. We used to dump milk in the old days to keep the price up. We produce such an abundance, we destroy it to keep the price up. Do you understand that?
So you think there is no resource that would be scarce?
Not if they can put up billions for war and make millions of airplanes. You know, when you think of a war, it costs a lot of money and it produces nothing of value except for the contractors that rebuild the city.
What about neodymium, which is the element for wind turbines, which is a rare metal? There's not a lot of resources for that.
They're talking about scarce resources. You know, was it before World War II? They blockade Germany, and they could. Was it Germany? They couldn't get rubber, so they invented synthetic rubber. They couldn't get certain foods, so they used sawdust as ham. When there's a problem, if you put science and technology on it, they usually solve it one way or the other. When there's a scarce resource, then it would be announced, and that's what you put the research on to solve the problem.
That makes sense. Do we have the technology, for example, let's say with the neodymium magnets, do we have the technology to actually create neodymium magnets, something like neodymium magnets?
Do we have the technology to create neodymium magnets if there's a scarcity of that metal?
Yeah, they find out that if you take a coil of wire and wrap it around something and run a current through it, it can induce a current in any other coil nearby.
But that's less
Well,
efficient.
in
which is
other
why
words, we
they-
have more than enough energy. We have, I want to tell you what we use for energy if we run out of oil. The earth has geothermal energy, you know what that is?
Yeah.
Natural volcanic energy.
Yeah.
That renews itself. It doesn't have to be put back into the earth. So if you tap the earth's volcanic energy, you have enough energy for for thousands of years. But I'm not talking about wind, sun power, underwater streams, tidal differences. There's many sources of energy. There's no shortage of energy, except those people that own the energy system would like to control all the Earth's energy, including water. You pay $1 for a glass of water. Well, who the hell sets that? There's another guy with a white collar. He pronounces you man and wife. Where the hell did he come from? And then if you don't get along, there's another guy called a lawyer. He's going to cost you $2,000. Split it up. Where the hell did he come from? He's made by a money system. In the future, you live with a girl, and if you don't get along, you move the hell out, just like you do today. If you live with a guy or a girl and you don't get along, you can move out. You don't need to pay a lawyer $2,000 to get a divorce. She says, I want the car, the house, and the kids. She's more apt to get it, because she doesn't have the means to earn a living. And the society tries to keep it that way. They try to get women to be obedient to men. I don't want women to be obedient to anything. I want them to do what they want to do, study what they want to study. Not what somebody else thinks is good for you. Have a husband and 3 children, 2 boys and a nice girl. That's nice. That's the way you're brought up.
Automatic.
Now, if you have children, the best thing you can do is teach them the best you know. And you have to teach them that there's no magic. You have to show them that no 2 flakes are alike, no snow. That seashells are all very different. The more you show a kid, if I show my kid pictures of insects, centipedes, moths, butterflies, the more you show them, the broader their mind. The less they see, the less they know. So you show pictures to kids of Afro-Americans, Japanese, Chinese, Filipinos, show them all kinds of people. You see, the earth has a lot of people, and you look funny to a Chinese person. Your eyes look very funny. He said, I wouldn't want to marry that guy with the straight eyes. It should be slanted. See, in other words, you're brought up by different cultures, and they find you funny looking. And we find the Arabs wrong, and the Arabs find us wrong because of the difference in culture. So in the future, you never attack. This guy that was the head of the Klan said to me, hey Jock, you're a smart guy, what do you think of the KKK? This is what the answer I gave him. I think it's a great organization, but it doesn't go far enough. That gets his, what do you mean? That gets his ear. But if you attack, you lose it. Do you understand that? Never attack anybody. Even if you say, we ought to get rid of all the goddamn foreigners, ship out of the country. See, that's a great idea, but it doesn't go far enough. What do you mean? Then you're talking about the Venus. You understand? Never attack. If you attack, you lose it. Now, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, you can raise your hand. Never attack. Always say you're right, but it doesn't go far enough.
How exactly did you fix the KKK? Like, I know you talked to them and stuff, but like, how exactly, like, what examples did you use to change their minds?
What did you do to change the KKK? Can you go over Bambi, the example with Bambi, please?
Yeah. I gave my little girl a cigarette, not lit, when she was 3 years old. I put it in and I cut the cigarette with a razor blade and put a hairpin in it. And when I fired a blank at her, it split the cigarette near her mouth, and the hairpin blew tobacco all over the place. And Lou, who was the head of the clan, said, you're the best shot I ever saw. I didn't do that with my own kid. I didn't do that with my own kid. He didn't know I cut the cigarette, put a hairpin in it. So he said, would you mind coming to a clan meeting? I said, they wouldn't listen to me. Said he said he was in charge. He gave them a lesson. That's how I changed them. But a black man can never change the Klan. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
A white man can. But it's better for a black man to speak to black people than a white man. He said, what is Whitey doing here? You know what I mean? If I went to a black meeting, I stand a better chance if you go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'd rather Filipino speak to the Philippines, Japanese to speak to Japanese people. So I teach Japanese people that understand we're all alike. Japanese, the same thing we need. Clean air, clean water, no smokestack. And an American named Cottrell made the first unit where smoke went by and picked up electrical charge. Then there was another set of plates that pulled the smoke over. And no smoke comes out of the smokestack, just hot air. And that was 80 years ago that he designed that. So it's still not installed all over the place. We got ways of solving all problems. There are no problems that can't be solved if they're physical, real problems.
John, can you go over what you did with the Klan to change them? You know,
Yeah. First thing I did was I made a movie with a pig in it, because I knew they all had pigs. Most of the guys I talked to lived down the country. So I took a baby pig and raised it in the dome. And I put a waste paper basket in the middle of the dome, but I sunk it down so it's level with the floor. Then I put some crumpled paper nearby. I figured the pig would knock the paper, the paper would be near the waste paper basket, and the pig would knock it in accidentally. It took the pig 10 times before he realized that when the paper fell in the basket, it hit a switch, and the switch dispensed pig food, not much. And then the pig would pick this up and put it in the basket, and I'd raise the basket up from the ground so it stuck up fully. If I start with the basket sticking up, it's hard to teach a pig to pick it up and put it in the basket. It's easier if you start low and then pull the basket up. So later on I put another piece of paper far away after he put this paper in. He saw that paper and the dispenser didn't dispense food. So he put this paper and dispensed food. I moved the food dispenser further and further away till it was in another room. Then I wanted the pig to change the dirty bed sheet that he slept on. So I made a bed for the pig with 2 rollers. The bed was wrapped around 2 rollers. I put a wheel at the end. First I brought the pig up to turn that wheel. If you put a pig in a small cage, he walks up and back like a prisoner. Any animal will walk up and back in a cage. So the pig got up on the wheel through adrenaline. You say glands. And he turned the wheel and that dispensed more pig food. So he always got up on the wheel and turned it and never gave him enough food. Then I put the wheel on the end of one of the rollers where the bed was. So when the pig came in the morning, he turned the wheel that dispensed food and changed the bed sheet. The pig didn't know he was changing the bed sheet. He didn't do it because he was a smart pig. Then I wanted the pig to take a shower. Now how do you ask a pig to take a shower? You can ask him all you want to and he won't take a shower. So what I did is I bent a rubber tube, like the letter U, and put some bamboo on top and made it smaller than the pig. When he walked out of his quarters, it scratched his back. And the pig liked that. So I turned around and went up and back on 10 times. And once he went up and back about 5 times, that operated the switch, which turned on the shower. So I run that film at a Klan meeting. And they say, Jock, I raised me a lot of pigs. That's what they said. I never saw no pig that smart. How come? I put a jacket on the pig. I said, the immaculate pig. Contradiction in terms. And then I put 3 dirty rags in the main room, and he picked them all up and put them in the wastebasket. And then he took a shower and he changed the dirty bedsheet. And the Klansman said, I raised me a lot of pigs. I never seen no pig that smart. I said, the pig doesn't know what he's doing any more than you do, or a soldier. He'd be able to kill He joins the army because he's told that the goddamn Japanese raped an American woman. And so they join the army. They join the army on false accusations. The Democrats lie about the Republicans. The Republicans lie about the Democrats continuously. Watch your TV. You see that they make up stories about one another. None of them know the truth. There's no such thing as truth. So when I was about 17, I met Einstein. And he invited me to his home. And he said to me, I said, do you believe in God? First thing he said is, which one? Which God? So I didn't answer that. And I said, do you believe in truth? He said, what do you mean by truth? I said, well, that certain things are a certain way. He says, like what? He wouldn't let me get away with words. I said, well, this is smooth. He said, you really think it's smooth, don't you? I said, it sure is. He put it under a microscope and he blew it up and it looked very rough. So I said, is that what it's really like? He said, we can't see things as they really are. So he blew it up more and it looked like slivers of different types of metal. I said, is that what it's really like? He said, we can't see things as they really are, only as our receptors pick them up. I didn't know what that meant. So I said, well, your eyes can't see germs or radio waves moving through the room. Right now there's a lot of radio waves moving through this room, but we can't see it. So that's why we cannot be conscious. We can only be as conscious as our receptors. Do you know what that means? There's certain things you can't see, so you can't claim to be conscious. You can only claim to be a certain degree of consciousness. Anyway, I got that across to kids. And I want to know how kids think. So I asked my friends to bring about 10 kids to my lab. And they were about 4 to 6 years old. I asked them to draw a person, and this is what they drew. Some of you still draw it like this. So I took the kid's drawing, and I looked at it, and I said, take it to school. And the teacher gives them crayon to color thing. So the teacher started to hang it up. Said, don't hang it up. You're going to arrest the kid at that stage of development. The teacher said, I don't know what you're talking about. So I called the kid over that made this drawing. How did that guy, I don't know if it was a guy, but how does it get into the house? The house looks too small. He says, you're right. And I said, does this guy eat anything? It's like he never ate anything in his life. And the kid said, I made him too skinny. And the kids had mass right away and made the house bigger right away. They never did that again. Do you understand? Don't take what kids do. Change them right away. The kid says, is an elephant bigger than the house? I say, no. What keeps the moon up there, Daddy? There's no pole under the moon. You have to tell them as best you know how. Don't give them any fairy tale, Jack and a beanstalk, Little Red Riding Hood touches a white mouse and it becomes a white horse and it pulls the wagon that she's in. You give kids baloney, feed them a lot of that, and by the time they get out of school, they become metaphysical. They said the brain cannot be deciphered. It works through unknown processes. Human nature's been born. We don't know what it is. They give you a lot of stuff they don't know, which is dangerous. We tell kids what we know about the earth and what we don't know. We don't understand why cancer can't be controlled. We know now that cancer research depends on financial support, and the less financial support, the less work they do. We give every lab whatever the hell they need. Do you understand? If they say, we need an electron microscope, we say, how about 2 of them? Would that help more? We give them whatever the hell they need. No more limits on funding. No more limits. They don't have to pay for education. Everybody has a right to go whatever school they want to go to. And there's no money. You must do away with money. Otherwise you can pay off senators. You can pay off lawyers. You can pay people off. You can sell drugs with money. But if you do away with money, you can't sell drugs. You can't open a gambling casino. You can't have whorehouses. You understand? You can't do anything without money. So we do away with money, and we emphasize resource-based economy. If we have the resources, we can make enough resources to give to people, like the public library. If you forget that, remember the public library. The books are free. You don't have to pay anything for them. Every building around the central building is a resource office where you can check out a lawnmower, cameras, anything you want. There's no reason for a guy to hit you on the head and take your watch. You understand? There's no reason for a guy to break your window and steal your TV set. He can go to the Access Library and access one. There's no prisons, no police, no armies, no navies. Policemen are stupid. I hope there's no policemen here. Anyway, they're stupid because they carry out the orders. They spray stuff on people. Look at your newsreel. They were sitting there doing nothing, and the police was spraying tear gas in their eyes. The man is stupid beyond description. Now, like I said before, I repeat myself, if you steal a watch worth $150, they put you in jail if you serve defense for 7 years. It's cheaper to give a man a watch than put him in jail. Because you have to feed him, clothe him, medical care, dental care, give him a watch, and all that stuff. Make things available to people, and they don't steal. And don't teach other countries that this is the greatest country in the world. Say this country stole the land from India, so did all the other countries. Now we're trying to make it one nation with a new language that is not subject to interpretation. All language is subject to interpretation. You know what that means? You read the Bible, it says, this is what Jesus meant. The other guy, oh no, he meant that. The third person, you both know, this is what he meant. So, how can you got the Lutheran, the Seventh-day Adventist, the Church of God, because it's subject to interpretation. So you need a language that's not subject to interpretation. Whenever you talk to somebody, it goes in their head, comes out in relation to their background. So what we do is we give them a new language, like chemistry. When a chemist writes a formula, the other chemist doesn't pick it up and say, I think he means this, or I think he means that. He knows exactly what it means.
How do you express a subjective feeling with chemistry?
Well, in chemistry, they do express it. When a doctor writes a prescription, the pharmacist turns out the same thing. He doesn't say, I think he means this, or I think he means that.
The question was, how do you express a subjective feeling, is that what you said? Through language or through science?
You teach semantics in school. Are you familiar with semantics?
Yeah.
Okay. With semantics, you say, this is a formula. The guy says, I don't understand. You have to explain that. You have to explain anything new. When Edison invented the electric light, which he discovered really, he had to tell people how he does it. He runs a current through a wire, and it offers so much resistance and glows a certain amount. You have to explain to them what the new way of thinking is. You don't hope that they'll understand.
So if I say, I feel like I've got butterflies in my stomach, for example, how would I express that without any...
Well, in the new society, children are raised scientifically. When they don't talk about, I'm blushing, I feel this, I feel that. They don't talk about it. They say that I was not subject to your background. Do you understand?
Not quite.
No.
They're not subject to those same feelings. The guy said, boy, when I see that girl, I'm inhibited. She's so beautiful. They think there's such a thing as beauty. If you marry a very beautiful girl and she happens to be mean in every way, that face becomes ugly to you. Do you know that? You stay away from any girl that looks like that. There's no such thing as a good-looking person. That's the way you're brought up. If you're brought up black, where you wear a bone through your nose, that's beautiful. And that's why you're brought up. There are kids today that wear a silver thing through their tongue. That's a nothing thing.
But that doesn't address the
It is
initial
a
problem.
fact. It says I belong to that group. that think this way. But when you wear, if a man came from Mars, he said, what's that thing on your wrist, Doc? I said, I can't tell when it's 4 o'clock. This is better than I am telling me when it's 4 o'clock. It'll buzz if I have a meeting at 3 o'clock. It'll buzz at 2:45 to remind me. I can't do that. So in the future, we will make things differently than they are today. Things are designed today by engineers to wear out and break down, little beyond the warranty. How many of you knew that? It's called planned obsolescence. Yes.
I just want to address the issue that when the fact that you have a scientific language, we don't have one right now that could address that, but you could create one that where you can address those things without ambiguity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is the problem.
How do you address feelings in a scientific language without ambiguity?
Okay. That's what they're having trouble with automation. They don't know how to give automation feelings. If you smash a computer in front of 20 brand new ones, it doesn't say we'll get you. If it isn't this week or next week, we'll get you. They have no feelings. That's why computers will never take over. They tell you that the computers are getting smarter every year and they're going to take over. No, they're not, because they don't care. You can work your computer Saturday and Sunday and Monday, and they'll say, give me 1 day off, you bastard. You work me every day of the week. They don't care. But if you make computers that care, they only simulate caring. You can make a computerized face that says, oh my God, I'm so sorry to hear that, doesn't feel anything. Do you know what I mean? Yes.
So you think that one day when we're so advanced, we've got robots that can think for themselves, you don't think they might have the chance to take over?
Right now they do what they're programmed to do.
Right.
They don't do anything
But as computer systems advance and maybe we can create some intelligent artificial intelligence, do you think
feelings?
Maybe they can have feelings, maybe they're not feelings, maybe they're not real, but they're enough for them to think for themselves and maybe take over?
Just depends on
Do you think that robotics will eventually think for themselves and take over? You don't think that they'll have feelings in the future?
No.
Can you go over feelings in the future?
Feeling is a gut. You get hungry, so you hunt for food. Your sense of smell becomes keener when you're hungry. But if you have gut and you feel pain, if a guy pinches you, ouch. If you don't feel anything, you can't identify with anything. Yes.
Can you talk about putting feelings into an action pattern?
You can't do that. You can simulate it.
No, I'm talking about, when they have a car accident and the mother, emotes instead of picking up the rock.
You don't leave car driving up to people. In other words, when people used to operate elevators, they would turn the crank and never quite get to the floor. Today you press 17, it always stops at the floor.
That wasn't what I was getting. Let me try and deal with it, if you don't mind. We talk about feelings, but in the future you will transfer your feelings into an action pattern, meaning that you really don't want people walking around feeling poorly or feeling badly about war, but they work out systems to eliminate war. They change it to an action pattern. I'm going to tell you what that means.
Yeah. I saw 2 planes hit in midair, and the minute they hit, they locked together and were falling, spinning together. So I ran into the hangar, got a Jeep, put a fire extinguisher on it, and went out before the plane hit the ground and sprayed it. You understand? I helped save some people. But if you have kids in a car and it turns over and you can't open a door to get the kids on, and the gasoline is spilling over the engine, it's going to burst into flames. And say, oh my God, my kids are in the car, they're going to die. What would happen in the future if a car did that, which I doubt it? If a car did that, you would pick up a rock, break the window, take the kids out. Convert your feelings to an action pattern. Do you understand? Say, oh my God, the plane's hit, they're falling, nobody's bailing out, I hope they get out before it hits the ground. People hope and pray, but that doesn't work. So we have to convert our feelings into an action pattern. Do you know what that means? Instead of me disliking something you did, I tell you about it and say you couldn't know that because you didn't know those people. You know, I would do it, convert it to an action pattern, but not hate them.
I
Jeff,
actually
question?
I think it would be a solution, a new language in the future where people would no longer communicate. And I actually believe at one point we're no longer going to speak. We're actually going to connect mentally. So
Things
we
that
won't
eventually
speak.
we won't speak, we'll communicate mentally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you have a feeling, you're not going to tell me you have a feeling. I feel your feeling.
So when you have
So
a feeling, the
feelings
other
are
person
read
will
as
feel it.
feelings.
But
So.
first I want to tell you something. The book that you would love is called Language and Thought and Action by Hayakawa. Get that book. That'll help you. Because you've been doing your own thing for a long time. You need outside influence. The book is called Language and Thought and Action. Another one's called Tyranny of Words. Another one's called Mind in the Making by James Harvey Robinson. You've got to read other people's work that they do that contradicts the way you were brought up. You have a lot of good ideas, but a lot of them are old-fashioned and no longer valid. So write the name of these books. Language and Thought and Action. Mind in the Making, James Harvey Robinson. You can get it on the internet. And Tyranny of Words is the fact that we use language and we don't even know what the words mean that we use every day. They're false. The words that we use every day is a language given to you by your culture. Like, she's a good-looking chick, or then look at that chick, she's well-stacked. All that is learned in this culture. Therefore, every handbook written about sex is culture-bound. You know what I mean? In the Arab world, the books are different, because women should obey men, do whatever they ask, and there's less trouble. That's true. If you're brought up to obey the man, there's less trouble. But they didn't know what to do. They don't know how to control. They don't know how to make peace. They think if you make peace with the world, you lose the economic advantage. If you turn out refrigerators twice as fast as my company, if you share your production methods, you lose the competitive edge. So you keep it to yourself. You take out patents, which prevent other people from using your ideas. But in this economy I'm talking about, all new ideas belong to everybody. There's no more royalties. Everybody lives very well. There's no poor people or hungry people. There's no Salvation Army, no do-gooders. You understand that? Yes.
Is there any form of, let's say, government and in your society, and how does it actually work?
That's the second
Controls
picture.
resources.
The government on the bottom. See the globe?
Yeah.
The agricultural department is connected to agriculture, electrically. And if the wires turn into the soil, and if the water table drops, that pumps water out there.
Right, but who controls those resources?
And
They're
they're not
automated.
controlled.
Yeah.
You know what a turret head lathe is?
So completely automated?
A turret head lathe has a lot of the same parts. If a part wears out, it's moved off and another one plugs it in. There are machines in hospitals today that bring medication to different rooms. But if there's a person in the way, it'll stop. Then when the battery is low, it'll plug itself in to an electrical outlet and recharge itself. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
So get out a book or look on the internet, automation today. You'd be surprised
Yeah.
how many new things there are.
There's a question there.
Yeah, his question, I think, like, that book, Spaceship Earth by Bucky Fuller, like, the concept of looking at the Earth as, like, a closed system.
He's talking about the concept that Bucky Fuller has about looking at the Earth as a closed system.
Yeah, if you look at it, Earth as, like, a closed system or whatever, and, like, the resources are there, but you have to, like, use them
Resources are there and you have
more
to use them
adequately and stuff, so.
There's a book called Automation, you know,
Yeah.
not only automation, but cybernation, where you can take the atom,
Drexler,
grab the atom,
nanotechnology.
nanotechnology. You grab the atom and arrange it into any configuration. You can make meat, vegetables, anything, without killing animals. You can make a thick steak by arranging the atoms. They're called nanotechnology. Get that book if you're really interested. They're already using it. Yes. Question everything I say.
Jacques, can you go over the example when you were in the plan that you did with when Lou said, when you asked Lou, do you have any special ability? And he said, I can tell what people are like.
Yeah, Lou, the head of the clan, said he was born with special abilities. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, I can look at a photograph of a person and tell you all about him. I said, if you can do that, I'll give up science. So I brought a projector down to a clan meeting and projected a person on the wall. I got this picture in the post office. Lou says he looks like a good American. The picture, I project. He looks like an Army veteran, a loyal American, a good American, a family man. I said, anything else you can add to it? He said, no. Then I pulled the bottom of the picture out. It was wanted by the FBI for subversive action against the United States. And the Klan people were laughing at Lou for the first time. So I told him to shut up. He made a mistake this time, but maybe he's all right, so let's try some other things. So I said, I'm going to play a record for you. You tell me all about the person. And this guy was speaking about aeronautics with an Oxford accent. And Lou says, I see a skinny Englishman with thick eyeglasses. And he's a family man, very smart guy, been to the best college. Then the image comes on. It's a black man raised in England. It's a goddamn black man speaking like an Englishman. How come? Because he was raised in England. Lou, if I took your kids and raised them in Spain, he'd be Spanish. If I raised them in China, he'd walk with his hands in his sleeves. He'd pick up whatever customs are there if he were raised by a Chinese family. He says, you mean to say a black man isn't born black and born with lies and stealing all the time? I said, no, that's all the myth you've been brought up with. He says, well, every black man I met was always dishonest or they lied. I said, I guess that's the ones you picked. They work for less too. But they steal more because they don't have access. But the white man, when he has a depression, the prisons are filled with crime. Did you know that crime has a lot to do with the amount of people employed? If they're unemployed, crime goes up. If they're employed, it goes down. Once you know that, you know where the problems come from. There are no problems, I'm telling you. We can solve any problem man can ask. Except, like I say, we would give every lab whatever they needed, not depend on whether people make donations. Do you understand that? All right. Is the system perfect? No. But it's a hell of a lot better than what we've got. And it'll keep getting better. Yeah.
JV?
You said there's solutions for any problem. Well, here's a big one no one seems to be able to figure out. How about the rising sea levels from the warming environment?
You know that the snow is melting all over the world. Republicans can't see that. Here's what you do about it. There's about 30 inland seas that are thousands of feet below sea level. So you dig a canal and take the surface water and make artificial seas inland.
Inland deserts. Inland deserts. You said inland seas, but it's inland deserts below sea level.
Inland deserts. You make inland seas, and then the sun evaporates the water and it rains there more often. And you can grow more food. You can convert the desert to productive areas. And under the deserts, there's a lot of oil and a lot of other materials. But nobody, but the people of the earth own everything. All of the earth's resources become the common heritage of all the world's people. There's no more private nations with a line dividing Germany, France, England. It's all one now. Do you understand?
When is that, Jacques?
What's that?
When is that? What year is that?
He said, when will that happen? What year?
Well, when the flooding puts
You're talking about
Florida
common
underwater
heritage?
and New York underwater, then they'll do
He's
that.
talking about common heritage, when would the no nations?
Oh, I said, if we don't do that, we'll kill each other.
Yeah.
I'm
But it's
not
not-
asking you, I'm telling you that if we go on the way we are now with war machines, atom bombs, we're gonna kill each other.
But
We're
when,
moving in the wrong direction. The more you do when you leave here, you talk to people about the Venus Project, don't call it a political system, a way of thinking. And the more people that know about it, the transition will be smoother. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of trouble during the transition. I
So
think
the
that-
Venus Project
Yes,
could be defined as a global message of citizenry?
so the Venus Project can be defined as a global method of citizenry.
yeah, yes. That's the idea. Talk to people about it. If you don't talk to them, nothing will happen. They'll go right on thinking as they do. I'm sorry about that. I wish I could tell you, this is what you can do. You can. But every time I speak, we go all over the world on a lecture tour. And I tell all the people, I speak to 300 people at a time some places. And I said, when you leave here, talk about the Venus Project. If you don't talk about it, nothing will happen.
When it happens really depends on what other people do and how much initiative they take to learn about it and learn how to talk about it and learn how to change people. And it depends on what they do.
And if you work on people, you get better at it. You learn how to change people more so. Yes.
What jobs or careers in this current society help move towards a resource-based economy?
I talk to other people.
No, that's not the question he asked. But anything in the natural sciences, anything in the physical sciences, we always help.
Well, the methods of science,
He was saying, what professions or what do you learn now that would help in the future in a resource-based
learn
economy?
automation, study automation, computer sciences. That's where it's going. The more you know about it, the more you can contribute. Yes.
Could you explain? I heard a story about how you you changed your mother. Could you tell that story?
Can you tell the story of how you changed your mother?
Yeah. I brought a Japanese kid home one day, and my mother said loud enough for him to hear it. I don't want that kind around, she said. So I figured my mother was brought up with prejudice. So the Bible says, honor thy father and mother. And I said, honor anybody worthy of honor. Your father and mother could be wrong about many things. So you don't follow somebody because he's your cousin or your brother. Do you understand what I mean? Okay. So anyway, what I did is I worked on people and I changed all my friends so they became international in scope. And I told them to work on other people. Of course, I'm 98 years old. Most of my friends are dead now. So they can't be working on other people, but you can. Okay? And I don't think about death. I mean, it happens to all of us, but someday we'll overcome that. You may not see death come to an end, but it will in the next 20 years if we don't kill each other.
Jacques, can you go over the story with your mother?
Yes, I go back to it. So I use logic and reason with my mother. She said, I still don't want him around. So it didn't work. So I figured, if you can't get to your mother, you're not going to get to the world. So I made up a story. I said, Mom, I was swimming in the East River, and there's a high wall. I couldn't get ashore. This isn't true.
Yeah.
And Masato worked on a boat. He threw a lifesaver to me. I said, Mother, he saved my life. She said, oh my God, I didn't know that. So I said, well, what do you want to do? She said, please ask him to come back. I can't sleep at night. I hurt his feelings. I said, I'll ask him, but I don't know if he'll come back now. To get her to plead more. And she pleaded more. Please, Doc, ask him to come back. I feel terrible about it. So I'll ask him. And I said, Masato, the minute you come in the door, my mother, God bless you, and hug you, and say, you saved my son, thank you very much. And at dinner she was talking to him. So I walked out of the room, and I came back when Masato went to the washroom. I said, what do you think? He said, you know, he's a wonderful boy. He said, this is like you and I, has a wonderful family in Japan. He has a brother that's doing this and that. I said, well, how do you feel about him? She said, he's a wonderful person. I was wrong. But a month later, she put her arm around him and calls him son. And that's very different for her. So I said to her, Mother, he never saved my life. Once she did that, she said, you little devil, I would have never opened the door either.
Yeah.
You understand me? Some people can't take the truth, can't understand it. But she did understand it when I put her through. He saved my life. So she was thankful for that. But then I took it away. Never leave them in with a lie. Always tell the truth later when you see they've changed. Okay. Now, Roxanne's going to take you on a trip through this place and show you what we do here. And then when you come back, you can ask all your questions, write down what you want to know, and we'll take it from there. So you're coming back to ask questions. I hope you got something out of it.
Yeah. The matter is the big pack on the left, all of it. Oh, there's trash out here, actually. Oh, there's a trash can out
Pretty interesting.
I love it. I love it.
Thanks for good stuff. Let me get back. Remind me about Walden 2. Alright. Just say Walden 2 will come to me. And libertarianism. Fucking nature. What the hell, dude? De no ser así, entonces los sentimientos son como el alma que se va, pero no creo que los sentimientos se los tiene algo que para poder saber.
I think everyone was latched on to that. Everyone would like to latch on to that. Oh, yeah, no, I understand that, yeah. But I mean, it wasn't practice. Right, but I mean, that's probably a good starting point, you know, when that's something that everyone can agree upon. It's like, wow, I don't know, you know.
We're going to do there's something in the rest
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
We go this way?
My car is actually all the way back here. Back in a copy. Cool.